The emergency lights flashed red across every console in the Galactic Council chambers. Speaker Velrothi's four eyes widened as she read the urgent message that appeared on her datapad. Her hands trembled slightly, causing the scales on her arms to shimmer under the bright lights. She had served the Council for 30 years and had never seen an alert coded with maximum priority. Around the massive circular chamber, representatives from 47 different species checked their own devices. The quiet murmur of conversation quickly grew into worried chatter. The Velkin ambassador's wings fluttered nervously. The crystalline form of the harmonious delegate pulsed with orange concern. Even the normally calm Cuthran counselor leaned forward in her seat. Velrothi struck the resonance gong 3 times. The deep sound echoed through the chamber and silence fell immediately. "Council members," she began, her voice steady despite her worry. "We have received confirmed reports from our surveillance stations near the Sol system. The humans have successfully tested a faster-than-light drive." A few delegates shifted in their seats. The Terran species was known to the Council, though barely. They had only developed basic fusion engines 200 years ago. By galactic standards, they were practically children playing with technology. They didn't fully understand. "That is unexpected but not alarming," said Ambassador Thaxil of the Military Coordination Fleet. His massive form filled his seat, and his deep voice carried authority. "Many young species eventually develop FTL capability. We have integration protocols for this situation." Velrothi's expression darkened. "The problem is not that they have FTL coordinator. The problem is how their drive works." She gestured to the holographic display at the center of the chamber. A 3-dimensional image appeared, showing complex mathematical equations and simulation data. Chief Scientist Kravun stood from his seat. His thin, elongated body moved with careful precision as he approached the display. "What you are seeing," he explained, adjusting the hologram with practiced movements, "is an analysis of the human FTL test conducted 3 days ago in their outer solar system." The hologram shifted to show a small spacecraft. Energy readings spiked around it, and suddenly the ship vanished. The display tracked its position as it reappeared nearly 4 light-years away, then jumped back to its starting point. "Remarkable speed," noted the Velkin ambassador. "That jump would take our ships at least 3 days using the standard FTL lanes." "Yes," Kravun replied, his voice tight with concern. "They completed it in 18 minutes. But observe what they left behind." He manipulated the display again. The image zoomed in on the space where the human ship had been. Tiny distortions appeared like cracks in invisible glass. "These are tears in the fabric of space-time itself." The chamber erupted. Delegates shouted questions and exclamations in a dozen different languages. Velrothi struck the gong again, harder this time. Kravun waited for quiet before continuing. "The humans call it the Alcubierre Chen drive. Instead of using established quantum pathways or dimensional folding like our technology, their drive creates temporary singularities. It tears open holes in reality and collapses them immediately behind the ship." "That's insane," whispered the crystalline delegate. "It's worse than insane," Kravun said grimly. "Our simulations show that these tears don't heal completely. They leave behind weak points in space-time. We don't yet know the long-term effects, but the possibilities are catastrophic. Unstable wormholes could form. Causality itself could be violated. There's even a theoretical risk of bleeding between dimensions." Thaxil stood, his bulk casting a shadow across several nearby seats. "Have the humans been informed of these dangers?" "We are attempting to establish contact now," Velrothi said. "However, our preliminary analysis suggests they are unaware of the full implications of their technology. Their test flights have been limited, and they lack the advanced spatial sensors needed to detect the damage they're causing." The massive doors at the chamber's entrance opened with a soft hiss. A security officer entered and whispered something to Velrothi. She nodded and turned back to the assembly. "The human ambassador has arrived." She was already en route for a scheduled diplomatic meeting. "I've asked her to join us immediately." Ambassador Chen Wei entered the chamber moments later. She was a small woman by human standards, dressed in the formal blue and gold uniform of Earth's United Nations Space Council. Her black hair was pulled back neatly, and her dark eyes scanned the assembled aliens with curiosity rather than concern. She smiled pleasantly and bowed in the traditional greeting. "Speaker Velrothi, honored council members," she said. "I was surprised to receive an emergency summons, but I am happy to attend. How may Earth be of service?" Velrothy gestured to an open seat near the center of the floor. Ambassador Chen, thank you for joining us on such short notice. We have received reports about a recent technological development on your world, a faster-than-light drive system. Chen's face lit up with pride. Yes, I'm so glad you've heard. It's the greatest achievement in human history. Dr. Sarah Chen, my cousin, actually led the team that made it possible. We've been hoping to share this news with the council officially. Your enthusiasm is noted, Velrothy said carefully. However, we have concerns about the nature of this technology. Chen looked confused. Concerns? But this is wonderful news. With FTL capability, humanity can finally join the galactic community as true partners. We can establish colonies, engage in trade, explore the universe. She paused, her smile fading slightly as she noticed the serious expressions around her. What kind of concerns? Cravun stepped forward. Ambassador, our analysis suggests your drive system operates by creating controlled singularities that tear through space-time. Is this accurate? Well, I'm not a scientist myself, Chen admitted. But yes, that's essentially correct. Dr. Chen's team found that conventional FTL theory was too slow and energy-intensive for our needs. They discovered a way to create what they call micro-breach points that allow near-instantaneous travel. And did they consider the structural integrity of space-time itself? Cravun asked, his tone sharp. Chen blinked. I'm sorry, I don't understand the question. The scientist brought up the hologram again, showing the spatial tiers. Every time your ships use this drive, they damage the fabric of reality. These tiers accumulate. They create instabilities. The potential consequences range from navigational hazards to catastrophic dimensional collapse. The color drained from Chen's face. That can't be right. We've run dozens of tests. Everything has been successful. You've run 47 tests, Cravun corrected, which is not nearly enough to observe the long-term effects. Your species lacks the sensors and theoretical framework to understand what you're doing. Chen straightened in her seat, and her diplomatic training reasserted itself. With respect, Chief Scientist, if there are dangers we haven't considered, we would welcome guidance from the Council. That's one reason we're here, to learn from more experienced civilizations. We appreciate your openness, Velrothy said. However, there is another matter. We understand that Earth has plans to launch a colony ship using this drive system? Yes, Chen confirmed, her pride returning. The Perseverance launches in 3 weeks. 10,000 colonists are going to Proxima Centauri b. It will be humanity's first interstellar colony. The chamber fell silent. Thaxel's hand moved to the weapon at his side, an unconscious gesture that didn't go unnoticed. Several delegates exchanged worried glances. Ambassador Chen, Velrothy said slowly, we must request that you delay this launch until we can fully assess the risks of your drive technology. Chen's expression hardened. Speaker, I appreciate the Council's concern, but Earth has spent 30 years and trillions of credits developing this program. 10,000 people have prepared their entire lives for this journey. I cannot simply tell them to wait because of theoretical dangers that may or may not exist. The dangers are quite real, Cravun insisted. Then help us understand them, Chen countered. Send your scientists to work with ours. Share your knowledge, but don't ask us to abandon our dreams because we found a solution you didn't think of first. The words hung in the air like a challenge. Velrothy knew that forcing the humans to comply would require sanctions or even military action. But allowing them to proceed could threaten the stability of local space-time. The Council faced an impossible choice, and they had less than 3 weeks to make it. The transport ship descended through Earth's atmosphere with practiced ease. Military Coordinator Thaxel watched the planet's surface grow larger through the viewport. Blue oceans covered most of the world, with green and brown continents scattered between white clouds. It looked peaceful and beautiful, which made the danger humanity represented feel even more absurd. It's hard to believe such a dangerous technology came from such a young species, he said to Chief Scientist Cravun, who sat beside him reviewing data on a portable console. Intelligence and wisdom are not the same thing, Cravun replied without looking up. Humans are clearly intelligent. Whether they possess wisdom remains to be seen. The delegation consisted of 5 council members, including Councillor Yixara of the Kuthren, whose ancient species had seen empires rise and fall across 10,000 years. She had insisted on joining the inspection team, though she was primarily a political leader rather than a scientist or soldier. Their transport landed at Luna Research Station, built into the gray surface of Earth's moon. Ambassador Chen and two other humans waited at the airlock to greet them. One was a tall woman in a white lab coat with tired eyes and gray streaks in her black hair. The other was a muscular man in a military uniform decorated with medals and insignia. "Welcome to Luna Station," Ambassador Chen said warmly. "May I present Dr. Sarah Chen, Director of the Alcubierre Drive Program, and Commander Marcus Webb, Head of Security for Human Space Operations." Dr. Chen stepped forward and offered her hand in the human greeting gesture. Thaxel gripped it carefully, aware that his strength could easily crush human bones. Her handshake was firm and confident. "Thank you for coming," Dr. Chen said. "I understand the Council has concerns about our work. I hope we can address them together." "We hope so as well," Cravoon said, his tone skeptical. Commander Webb led them through the station's corridors. The facility was impressive for a young species with clean white walls, efficient lighting, and sophisticated computer systems. Humans moved purposefully through the halls, most wearing either lab coats or engineering coveralls. Several stopped to stare at the alien visitors before remembering their manners. The main laboratory was enormous, taking up nearly a quarter of the station's interior. At its center sat a sleek spacecraft about 30 meters long. It gleamed under the bright work lights, and dozens of human technicians crawled over its surface performing maintenance checks. "This is the Daedalus," Dr. Chen said with obvious pride, "our fastest prototype. She's completed 12 successful jumps, including the test your sensors detected last week." Cravoon approached the ship slowly, his scientific instruments already scanning. "May I examine the drive mechanism directly?" "Of course. This way." Dr. Chen guided them to the rear of the vessel where the drive core was exposed for maintenance. The technology was surprisingly elegant despite its crude appearance. Crystalline matrices channeled energy through quantum field generators, all focused on a central singularity chamber. "Fascinating," Cravoon admitted reluctantly. "The energy efficiency is remarkable. You're generating controlled singularities with less than half the power our models predicted would be necessary." "We had to be efficient," Dr. Chen explained. "Earth's fusion reactors can only produce so much power, and we couldn't afford to build massive generation stations just for FTL drives. So we found ways to focus the energy more precisely. By ignoring every safety principle in galactic engineering standards," Thaxel observed. Dr. Chen's expression hardened slightly. "We don't have access to galactic engineering standards. Earth only made first contact with the Council 15 years ago, and we've been on the waiting list for full membership ever since. We've been solving our problems alone for our entire history. That doesn't stop just because we know aliens exist." Commander Webb stepped forward before the conversation could become more heated. "Perhaps we should discuss this over lunch. Our cafeteria has prepared food suitable for all your species' dietary requirements." During the meal, Counselor Yixara asked the question that had been on everyone's mind. "Dr. Chen, why did you choose such a dangerous approach? Surely your scientists understand the concept of spatial stability." Dr. Chen set down her fork and met the ancient alien's gaze directly. "We understand it in theory, but here's what you need to understand about humanity. We live on a planet with limited resources and a population of 12 billion people. Earth is dying slowly, poisoned by centuries of industrial pollution. We need colonies, and we need them soon. Not in 100 years after careful study, but now. So you chose speed over safety," Cravoon said. "We chose survival," Dr. Chen corrected. "Every great achievement in human history came from someone willing to try what everyone else said was impossible or too dangerous. When humans first sailed across oceans, people said we'd fall off the edge of the world. When we first flew, experts proved mathematically that it couldn't work. When we split the atom, we were warned we might ignite the atmosphere. But we did all these things anyway, because the alternative was staying still, and staying still means death. It also means you survive through luck as much as skill," Thaxel pointed out. "Maybe," Commander Webb agreed, "but we did survive. That counts for something." After lunch, Dr. Chen offered to demonstrate the drive in action. Thaxel immediately objected, but Cravoon raised a hand to silence him. "Actually, I would like to see it. We need direct observational data, and our sensors are far more sophisticated than human equipment. We'll be able to measure effects they cannot detect." An hour later, the Daedalus sat in open space 1,000 kilometers from Luna Station. The council delegation watched from the station's observation deck, with Kravoon's instruments set up and recording. Dr. Chen stood at the communications console, speaking calmly to the Daedalus pilot. Daedalus, you are clear for jump. Destination is Alpha Centauri system. Standard coordinates. Execute when ready. Roger that, Luna Control. Beginning jump sequence. The ship's exterior began to glow with a soft blue light. Energy readings spiked across Kravoon's displays. Then reality seemed to twist around the vessel like watching water swirl down a drain. There was a brilliant flash and the Daedalus vanished. Jump complete. The pilot's voice crackled over the radio. Transit time 4 minutes. Arriving at Alpha Centauri now. Kravoon stared at his instruments in disbelief. Impossible. That journey should take at least 3 days, even with our best FTL drives. Not impossible, Dr. Chen said quietly. Just different from what you're used to. 20 minutes later, the Daedalus returned the same way it had left, appearing in a flash of twisted light. The pilot reported all systems normal and no issues during transit. But Kravoon's instruments told a different story. His face grew pale as he studied the readings. Dr. Chen, please come look at this. The scientist leaned over his shoulder, studying the display. What am I looking at? These are spatial integrity readings from the jump point. He highlighted several areas on the screen. See these distortions? They're the tiers in spacetime we discussed at the council. But look at this data from your previous test site. The display shifted to show another set of readings. The distortions were larger and more numerous. The tiers are growing, Kravoon said slowly. Each jump adds new damage, but it also makes the existing tiers slightly worse. You've only conducted 47 jumps, so the effect is still minimal. But if you start using this drive regularly for colony ships and trade vessels, the accumulation will accelerate exponentially. Dr. Chen studied the data silently for a long moment. When she finally spoke, her voice was quiet but firm. How long before it becomes dangerous? I don't know, Kravoon admitted. This is unprecedented. It could be years or it could be months. We need more data, more simulations, more time to study the phenomenon. Time we don't have, Commander Webb said. The Perseverance launches in 18 days. 10,000 people are counting on that ship. Thaxel turned to face the humans directly. His massive form seemed to fill the observation deck. Then those 10,000 people will need to wait. The Council cannot allow you to proceed with this launch. The risk to galactic infrastructure is too great. You can't make that decision for us, Webb said, his hand moving unconsciously to his sidearm. The Council has the authority to regulate FTL technology within our jurisdiction. Thaxel replied calmly. This has been galactic law for 3,000 years. Earth isn't part of the Council yet, Dr. Chen pointed out. We're still waiting for full membership approval, remember? Which means your laws don't apply to us. The standoff was interrupted by Counselor Yixara, who had been silent throughout the demonstration. Perhaps there is a middle path. Dr. Chen, would you be willing to share your research data with our scientists? If we work together, we might find a way to make your drive safer. Dr. Chen looked at Commander Webb, who shook his head slightly. She sighed. I appreciate the offer, Counselor. But Earth has learned to be cautious about sharing technology with more powerful civilizations. We've read our own history. We know what happens to weaker peoples when stronger ones decide to help them. We are not here to exploit you, Yixara said gently. Maybe not intentionally, Webb replied. The Perseverance hung in orbit above Earth like a massive silver needle, 300 meters of human engineering and hope. Inside, 10,000 colonists prepared for the journey that would change their lives forever. They checked their belongings, said goodbye to loved ones over video calls, and dreamed of new worlds under alien stars. Commander Webb stood on the bridge next to Captain Rodriguez, watching the final preparations through the main viewport. Below them, Earth turned slowly, its blue surface dotted with lights from cities that stretched across entire continents. All systems green, Rodriguez reported. Crew and passengers secured. Drive core at optimal temperature. We're ready for jump on your order, Commander. Webb hesitated, thinking about the Council's warnings and the data Kravoon had shared. Dr. Chen had spent the past week studying those readings, barely sleeping, trying to understand the full implications, but she had also confirmed that the Perseverance's jump would be safe. The accumulated damage from their test flights wasn't severe enough to pose immediate danger. The Council fleet is holding position at the edge of the system, the tactical officer reported. 3 warships. They're not moving to intercept, but they're watching. They won't fire, Webb said with more confidence than he felt. They're just trying to intimidate us. Execute the jump, Captain. Yes, sir. All hands prepare for FTL transition. The lights dimmed as power flowed to the drive core. Through the viewport, space itself seemed to shimmer and bend. Then the Perseverance was gone, vanishing in a flash of blue light that left only empty space and a confused pattern of gravitational waves. On Earth, celebrations erupted. Humanity had defied the Council and launched its first colony ship successfully. News broadcasts showed crowds cheering in the streets. Government officials gave speeches about independence and human ingenuity. For a brief moment, the entire species felt united in triumph. 3 days later, the mood changed. Dr. Chen was in her laboratory when the emergency alert arrived. She read the message twice, hoping she had misunderstood. Then she activated the secure communication link to the Council's spatial monitoring station. Cravoon's face appeared on the screen. He looked tired and worried. Dr. Chen, you've seen the reports? I'm looking at them now, she said, studying the data streaming across her displays. This can't be right. The spatial distortions along the Perseverance's flight path are widening. Not just widening. They're growing exponentially faster than our models predicted. The tiers your test flights created were small and relatively stable. But when your colony ship made its jump, something changed. The accumulated damage from all your previous jumps seems to have reached a threshold. Dr. Chen felt ice forming in her stomach. What kind of threshold? We don't know. This is completely unprecedented in galactic history. No species has ever used FTL technology that directly damages spacetime like this. Cravoon's image flickered as interference crossed the connection. But the effect is spreading. We're detecting spatial instabilities along routes where your test flights occurred weeks ago. Something about the Perseverance's jump triggered a cascade reaction. What does that mean for the ship? Are the colonists in danger? The ship itself is fine. They arrived safely at Proxima Centauri. But the path they took is now creating problems for everyone else. 5 Council member species have filed formal complaints. The Velkan merchant fleet lost 2 freighters to gravitational shears near one of your old jump points. The crews barely had time to evacuate before their ships were torn apart. Dr. Chen closed her eyes. How many casualties? 13 dead, 27 injured. And that's just the beginning. If these tiers continue to expand, entire trade routes could become impassable. Billions of beings depend on those routes for food, medicine, and essential goods. We didn't know, Dr. Chen said quietly. No. But you were warned that you didn't know enough to proceed safely. Now people are paying the price for humanity's impatience. The communication ended, and Dr. Chen sat alone in the dark laboratory for a long time. Outside her window, Earth continued its peaceful rotation, unaware of the storm that was building. Within hours, the Council reconvened an emergency session. This time, the tone was very different from their first meeting. Ambassador Chen stood in the center of the chamber, and this time, there were no friendly greetings or polite smiles. The assembled delegates stared at her with expressions ranging from anger to fear to cold calculation. The Council recognizes Ambassador Chen of Earth. Speaker Velrathi said formally, "You have been summoned to address the matter of spatial disturbances caused by human FTL operations. How do you respond to the charges of reckless endangerment and violation of navigational safety protocols?" Chen stood straight despite the weight of dozens of alien gazes. Earth acknowledges that our drive technology has created unexpected effects. We are working to understand and address these issues. However, we maintain that we acted in good faith based on the information available to us. Good faith is not sufficient when your actions kill innocent beings, Thaxel said coldly. The families of the dead Velkan crew members do not care about your good intentions. I understand their pain and Earth mourns those losses, Chen said. But we were not given adequate information about the risks. The Council knew we were developing FTL technology for years. You could have offered guidance or shared your knowledge. Instead, you kept us at arm's length and denied our requests for full membership. We deny membership to species that prove themselves dangerous and irresponsible, the Velkan ambassador snapped, his wings flaring in agitation. You have just proven we were right to do so. Councillor Yixara raised her hand for attention. Placing blame does not solve the current crisis. We must focus on preventing further damage and determining accountability later. The solution is simple, Thaxil said. Earth must immediately cease all FTL operations. All human ships must be recalled or impounded. The drive technology must be surrendered to Council authority for proper disposal. Chen felt her face flush with anger. You're asking us to give up our one path to survival. Earth's population is still growing. Our planet's resources are depleting. We need those colonies. Then you should have developed safer technology, Thaxel replied. We would have if you had helped us instead of treating us like children too young to sit at the adult table. The argument continued for hours, with neither side willing to compromise. Human nationalist movements on Earth began calling for complete withdrawal from galactic affairs. They argued that the Council was trying to keep humanity weak and dependent. Some even suggested that the reports of damage were exaggerated or fabricated to justify Council control. Meanwhile, the Council's military faction began drawing up plans for a quarantine of the Sol system. If Earth refused to cooperate voluntarily, they would be forced to comply. Patrol ships moved into position around known human navigation routes. Dr. Chen worked frantically with her team, trying to find a solution. They ran thousands of simulations, tested dozens of modifications to the drive system, and consulted with every expert on Earth who had even passing knowledge of theoretical physics. But the problem was more complicated than they had imagined. It's like we opened a wound in reality, Dr. Chen explained to Commander Webb during one of their late-night strategy sessions. And now that wound is infected. The tears aren't just staying the same size or slowly healing like we hoped. They're spreading because there's feedback between them. Each tear makes nearby tears slightly worse, which makes the first tear worse, and so on. Can we stop it? Webb asked. I don't know. Maybe if we had access to Council technology and research, but they're not exactly eager to share right now. What about the Perseverance? Can we bring them home? Dr. Chen shook her head. Making another jump would only add more damage to an already critical situation. The colonists are stuck on Proxima Centauri B until we figure this out. Then came the news that changed everything. Council Deep Space Monitoring Station detected a massive spatial anomaly in the Kepler 442 system, nearly 40 light-years from Earth. It was one of the locations where the Daedalus had conducted early test flights, back when they were first proving the drive concept worked. One of the tiny tears from those early tests had grown into something much worse. It had become a sustained rift in space-time, a wound that was pulling in matter and energy from the surrounding space. Asteroids were falling into it and disappearing. The rift was slowly expanding, and it showed no signs of stopping on its own. Kepler 442 was home to a Council mining colony. 50,000 beings lived and worked there, harvesting rare elements from the system's asteroid belt. They had days, perhaps only hours, before the rift's expansion threatened the colony itself. When Dr. Chen heard the news, she felt the blood drain from her face. This was no longer about politics or pride or even survival. This was about 50,000 lives that were in danger because of technology she had created. Ambassador Chen addressed the Council one final time that day. Her voice was steady, but tears ran down her cheeks as she spoke. Earth takes full responsibility for this crisis. We will do whatever is necessary to save the Kepler 442 colony, and we will accept whatever consequences the Council deems appropriate. But please, we need your help. The evacuation of Kepler 442 was turning into a nightmare. Council ships arrived in waves, but the expanding rift made every approach more dangerous than the last. Gravitational shears tore at their hulls, and spatial distortions threw off navigation systems that had worked perfectly for centuries. Captain Tivron of the evacuation vessel, Harmony's light gripped her command chair as another wave of turbulence shook the ship. How many more can we take? She called to her first officer. We're already at twice our rated capacity, Captain. Any more and we risk life support failure. Then we'll breathe less. Get another 100 aboard before we jump out. On the colony's main habitat, Mayor Jackson watched the evacuation with growing dread. 50,000 colonists and only enough ship capacity to move a few thousand at a time. Even if the ships made multiple trips, the math was simple and brutal. They would run out of time before they ran out of people to save. His communication console blinked with an incoming priority message. Mayor, this is Councilor Yixara. The Council has authorized an emergency measure. A human vessel is en route to attempt to collapse the rift. How long until they arrive? 6 hours? But Mayor, you need to understand that their plan may not work. You should continue evacuation procedures and assume the worst. Understood, Councilor, and thank you for being honest. Jackson looked out across the habitat's central plaza. Thousands of his people waited there, calm despite their fear, trusting that their government would save them. He had been mayor for 12 years and had guided them through economic troubles, equipment failures, and political disagreements. But this was different. This was death approaching slowly enough to see it coming but too fast to escape. The Daedalus traveled at maximum speed toward Kepler 442, pushed far beyond its normal operational limits. On the bridge, Commander Webb monitored their approach while Dr. Chen and Chief Scientist Cravun worked together at the science station. "I still don't completely understand how this will work," Webb admitted. Cravun looked up from his calculations. "Honestly, Commander, neither do I, not completely. The theory is sound, but we're operating at the very edge of known physics." Dr. Chen rubbed her tired eyes. She had not slept in 36 hours, running simulations and refining their plan. "The rift is essentially a wound that won't close. It's pulling in matter and energy, which makes it grow larger, which lets it pull in more matter and energy. It's a feedback loop." "So we interrupt the loop," Webb said. "Exactly. The Alcubierre-Chen drive creates temporary singularities that collapse almost immediately. If we can generate a series of these singularities inside the rift itself, at precisely calculated intervals, we might be able to destabilize the structure. Think of it like using controlled explosions to put out an oil well fire. Except if we get the timing wrong by even a fraction of a second, we could make the rift expand faster instead of collapsing it," Cravun added. "Or we could create secondary rifts. Or we could simply be torn apart by tidal forces before we complete the sequence. So no pressure then," Webb said with dark humor. Counselor Yixara entered the bridge, moving with the careful grace of her ancient species. "I've been speaking with the evacuation coordinators. At current rates, they can save perhaps 15,000 colonists before the rift makes the system impassable. That leaves 35,000 who will die if we fail." The weight of that number settled over everyone on the bridge like a physical thing. 35,000 beings with families, dreams, and futures that depended entirely on whether a desperate plan created by a reckless young species could succeed. "Then we won't fail," Dr. Chen said quietly. As they approached Kepler 442, the scale of the disaster became visible. The rift appeared on their sensors as a massive distortion in space-time, like a whirlpool in the fabric of reality itself. It was consuming the system's asteroid belt, pulling in rocks the size of cities and grinding them into fundamental particles before they disappeared into whatever lay beyond the tear. "The rift has grown to 300 kilometers in diameter," Cravun reported, "significantly larger than our most pessimistic projections. The tidal forces at its edge will be intense." "How close do we need to get?" Webb asked. Dr. Chen pulled up a holographic display showing their flight path. "We need to enter the rift itself. The singularities have to be generated inside the structure, not outside. We'll start at the outer edge and work our way toward the center, creating a cascade of collapses that should propagate through the entire system. And if it doesn't work, then we'll be the first humans to find out what's on the other side of a space-time rift." Dr. Chen tried to smile but couldn't quite manage it. They spent the next hour running final checks and calibrations. Every calculation had to be perfect. Every timing sequence had to match exactly. One mistake would mean death for themselves and for 35,000 colonists. Cravun worked alongside Dr. Chen with impressive focus. Despite being from completely different worlds with vastly different levels of technological development, they had formed a partnership built on mutual respect and shared purpose. They corrected each other's math, challenged each other's assumptions, and together created something neither could have achieved alone. "You know," Cravun said during a brief pause in their work, "if we survive this, your drive technology could be revolutionary. The speed, the efficiency, the sheer elegance of the energy focusing system. With proper safeguards and understanding, this could change how the entire galaxy travels." "If we survive," Dr. Chen agreed. "That's a pretty big if, indeed. But humanity has shown a remarkable talent for surviving impossible situations. Perhaps that will be your contribution to galactic civilization, not just a new technology, but a reminder that sometimes progress requires risk." The time came sooner than anyone wanted. Webb assembled the crew in the main corridor. There were 12 of them total, humans and aliens working together. Most were engineers who understood the drive system. A few were scientists who could assist with the calculations. All were volunteers who knew they might not return. "I won't lie to you," Webb said. This is probably the most dangerous mission anyone has ever attempted. We're flying into a tear in reality itself, and trying to fix it with the same technology that caused it in the first place. The odds are not good, but they're not zero, one of the human engineers said. No, they're not zero, and as long as there's any chance at all, we have to try. Webb looked each crew member in the eye. Anyone who wants to leave, now is the time. No shame, no judgment, nobody moved. Nobody spoke. They all just stood there waiting for orders. Then let's go save some lives, Webb said. The Daedalus approached the rift slowly, fighting against gravitational forces that tried to pull them in too quickly. The ship's hull groaned under the stress, and warning alarms beeped constantly on the bridge. Structural integrity at 70% and falling, the engineer reported. Hold together just a little longer, Webb murmured to his ship. They crossed the rift's event horizon and everything changed. Through the viewports, space looked wrong. Colors that had no name swirled in patterns that hurt to watch. The ship's instruments went crazy, showing readings that made no physical sense. Temperature both absolute zero and infinitely hot. Position both here and everywhere simultaneously. Time both stopped and racing forward. Beginning singularity sequence, Dr. Chen announced, her voice steady despite her trembling hands. First burst in 3, 2, 1 mark. The drive engaged with a sound like reality screaming. A micro-singularity formed just ahead of the ship, collapsed immediately and sent shock waves through the rift structure. The Daedalus lurched violently to the side. It's working, Cravoon shouted over the noise. The rift's coherence is destabilizing locally. Continue the sequence. They dove deeper into the rift, generating singularities in a carefully calculated pattern. Each burst stressed the ship further. Hull plates buckled. Systems failed. The crew worked frantically to keep critical functions online while the universe itself seemed to tear apart around them. Structural integrity at 40%. The engineer called. We can't take much more. We're halfway through the sequence, Dr. Chen said. We have to finish another singularity. The ship spun wildly, and several crew members were thrown against the walls. Blood floated in the zero gravity as artificial gravity failed. Approaching the rift's center, Cravoon reported. His voice was tight with pain. One of his arms hung at an unnatural angle, broken during the last violent maneuver. This is the critical point. If the cascade is going to propagate, it will start here. Dr. Chen initiated the final sequence. 3 singularities in rapid succession, perfectly timed, precisely positioned. The math was beautiful in its complexity, a symphony of physics that pushed the boundaries of what was possible. The Daedalus shuddered one last time. Alarms screamed warnings about imminent hull breach. Then everything went still. Through the viewport, they watched as the rift began to collapse. It started at the center where they had generated the final singularities and spread outward like ripples in a pond. The swirling, impossible colors faded back to normal black space. The gravitational distortions smoothed out. The tear in reality sealed itself with a flash of brilliant light. Then the ship's engines died, and they began to drift in the sudden silence. The rescue ship found the escape pod drifting in space 2 hours after it launched from the Daedalus. Dr. Sarah Chen sat in silence as they brought her aboard, unable to shake the image of Commander Webb's final salute from her mind. She had lost friends before, but this felt different. Marcus had died to save her, to save the knowledge that might prevent future disasters. Counselor Yixara sat beside her in the medical bay as doctors checked them both for injuries. He made the right choice, the ancient alien said gently. As painful as that choice was. I know, Chen whispered. That doesn't make it easier. It was never meant to be easy. Leadership and responsibility rarely are. The rescue ship's captain approached them carefully. Dr. Chen, we detected something unusual after your pod launched. The Daedalus began transmitting a massive data package on all frequencies. Engineering specifications, research notes, test results, everything about your drive technology. Chen looked up in surprise. Marcus did that? Commander Webb's signature is on the transmission authorization. It looks like he spent his final minutes uploading everything to ensure the information survived even if your pod didn't. Fresh tears ran down Chen's face, but she smiled through them. That stubborn, brilliant man. He was thinking 3 steps ahead until the very end. What Dr. Chen didn't know yet was that Commander Webb had also sent a personal message to the rescue fleet coordinator. When the ship searched the area around where the Daedalus had been, they found something impossible. A second lifeboat, damaged but functional, had been hidden in a debris field. Inside were 7 crew members, including Webb himself, unconscious from lack of oxygen but alive. The ship had enough lifeboats after all. Webb had lied to force Chen into the first pod without argument, then led the remaining crew to the second escape system. It had been a calculated gamble that almost failed, but human stubbornness and ingenuity had won out one more time. The Galactic Council reconvened 3 days later. This time the atmosphere was completely different. The emergency lights were off. Delegates spoke in normal conversational tones rather than urgent shouts. And for the first time, humans sat among them not as supplicants seeking approval, but as beings who had proven themselves through action. Speaker Velrathi called the session to order with 3 measured strikes of the resonance gong. Council members, we gather today to address the resolution of the Kepler 442 crisis and to determine the future relationship between the Council and humanity. Ambassador Chen stood in the center of the chamber, but this time Dr. Sarah Chen stood beside her. Commander Webb was still recovering in the medical bay, but he had sent a message supporting whatever decision they made. First, Velrathi continued, the Council acknowledges the debt we owe to the crew of the Daedalus. Their sacrifice saved 50,000 lives. Chief Scientist Kravoon has submitted a formal recommendation that they be honored with the Council's highest recognition for service to galactic civilization. The chamber erupted in approval. Even species that had called for human quarantine just days earlier now stood and showed their support. It was one thing to criticize recklessness in theory. It was another to watch beings risk everything to save strangers. However, Velrathi said, and the chamber grew quiet again, we must also address the fact that humanity's technology created the crisis in the first place. The question before us is how to balance recognition of heroism with accountability for the danger posed by the Alcubierre-Chen drive. Thaxil stood, and Chen braced herself for harsh words. But the military coordinator's expression had softened since their last confrontation. I have reviewed the complete data package that Commander Webb transmitted, Thaxil said. Working with Chief Scientist Kravoon, we have reached some conclusions that surprised us. The human drive, while undeniably dangerous in its current form, represents a genuine breakthrough in FTL theory. The energy efficiency alone could revolutionize space travel. More importantly, the humans achieved this with primitive sensors and limited understanding of advanced physics. Imagine what they could accomplish with proper resources and knowledge. Dr. Chen stepped forward. Council members, I want to be absolutely clear about something. We made mistakes. Terrible mistakes that cost lives and could have cost many more. We were arrogant and impatient. We thought we knew enough when we barely understood anything at all. She paused, gathering her thoughts. But we also achieved something remarkable. And I believe that with guidance from the Council, with proper safety protocols and with shared knowledge, we can make this technology work safely, not just for humanity but for everyone. You're asking us to trust you again, the Velkan ambassador said, his wings fluttering with agitation. After everything that happened, why should we? Because we learned, Dr. Chen replied simply. Because we faced the consequences of our actions and we didn't run away. Because when 50,000 lives were at stake, we risked our own to save them. That has to count for something. Counselor Yixara stood slowly. All eyes turned to her, knowing that her opinion carried enormous weight. She was the eldest member of the Council and had seen civilizations rise and fall across millennia. I have observed humanity closely these past weeks, Yixara said. I have seen their recklessness, yes, but I have also seen their courage, their creativity, and their capacity for growth. More importantly, I have seen something the Council has forgotten in our caution and our long history. She looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of delegates from dozens of species. We have become risk-averse. We follow the same FTL routes that were established thousands of years ago. We use technology that is safe and proven but fundamentally unchanged for generations. We have achieved stability but at the cost of innovation. Humanity reminds us that progress requires risk. Not reckless risk, but calculated risk taken with full knowledge and acceptance of consequences. What are you proposing, Counselor? Velrathi asked. I propose what I call the Kepler Compact. Humanity becomes a provisional member of the Council, with full membership granted after a period of joint oversight and cooperation. In exchange, Earth establishes a joint research institute where human scientists work alongside Council experts to develop a safe version of the Alcubierre-Chen drive. All technology is shared openly. All research is conducted under joint supervision, and all benefits are distributed equally among council members. Thaxel nodded. I support this proposal. With proper safeguards and council oversight, the human drive could be revolutionary, and frankly, we need humans' willingness to push boundaries. The galaxy has grown comfortable, perhaps too comfortable. Not everyone agreed immediately. The debate continued for hours. Some species worried about setting a precedent of rewarding dangerous behavior. Others questioned whether humans could be trusted to follow safety protocols after demonstrating such disregard for them initially. A few simply didn't like the idea of sharing power with a species so young and unpredictable. But slowly the opposition weakened. The image of the Daedalus crew risking everything to save strangers was too powerful to ignore. The potential benefits of the new drive technology were too significant to dismiss. And perhaps most importantly, Yixara's words about risk and progress resonated with delegates who had quietly wondered if galactic civilization had become too cautious. The vote came 3 days later. By a margin of 32 to 15, the Council approved the Kepler Compact. Humanity would become the newest provisional member of the Galactic Council, the first species to achieve that status in over 300 years. Ambassador Chen signed the formal documents with a hand that shook slightly. Dr. Chen stood beside her, thinking about all the lives lost and saved, all the mistakes made and lessons learned. Commander Webb watched the ceremony from his hospital bed, still recovering but smiling broadly. The celebration on Earth was enormous. Cities exploded with joy, but there were also memorial services for the Velkan crew members who had died in the initial accidents, and for the Daedalus crew members who almost didn't make it home. Humanity was learning that achievement and responsibility were inseparable. 6 months later, the Kravun Chen Institute opened on Luna Station. The facility was a joint effort, designed by both human and council architects, equipped with the best technology both civilizations could provide. Scientists from a dozen species worked in its laboratories, combining knowledge that had never been merged before. Dr. Sarah Chen stood in the main research lab, watching as the first safety-certified test of the new hybrid drive system prepared to launch. The design incorporated council safety protocols with human innovation. It was slower than the original Alcubierre Shen drive, but infinitely safer. And more importantly, the spatial integrity sensors showed no tears forming as the test ship jumped to FTL. Chief Scientist Kravun should have been there to see it, but he had died 3 months earlier from injuries sustained during the Daedalus mission. He had lived long enough to see the Institute's foundation laid and to contribute his final research notes. Dr. Chen kept a picture of him on her desk, a reminder of what cooperation could achieve and what it sometimes cost. Commander Webb entered the lab, walking with only a slight limp from his ordeal.